Okay, so I think we all kind of assume, as our digital world gets more and more connected, that we're just going to have to share more and more of our data, right?
Yeah, it's like that whole transparency equals progress idea, right?
Right, exactly. But what if there was actually a way to prove things were true without actually having to reveal all the details behind them?
Well, and what's really interesting right now is that the technology to actually make that kind of shift happen is really starting to get there.
And that is exactly what we're going to dive deep into today. We're looking ahead to London Insurance Week 2025, happening July 14th to 18th. And there's this one particular area of technology that is generating a ton of buzz.
Oh, yeah.
It's zero-knowledge proofs, or ZKPs, as they're known.
Yeah, I mean, London Insurance Week, that's a pretty huge event for the global insurance industry, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that ZKPs are getting so much attention there, I think, really says a lot about, the potential they have to really change things in the sector.
Absolutely. So our goal today is to really wrap our heads around what zero-knowledge proofs are all about, and, more importantly for you listening, why they're starting to get so much attention within the insurance world as it gets ready for LIW 2025. We've been looking at some really interesting discussions around this whole unseen revolution of zero-knowledge proofs that's expected to be a big focus there.
Yeah, and I mean, just think about it, right? I mean, how much do you really think about that balance between, giving over the information you have to and keeping your privacy when you're dealing with like insurance stuff?
Right. That is such a crucial point. And to be honest, when I first came across this whole idea of ZKPs, it almost felt like something out of a spy movie or something, proving something's true without giving away any other information. It's like some kind of cryptographic magic trick.
Right.
So let's try and break this down a bit. In the simplest terms, what exactly is a zero-knowledge proof?
Okay, so at its core, a zero-knowledge proof is really about one party, we call that the prover, convincing another party, the verifier, that a statement, some specific statement, is actually true. But they do it without revealing any information beyond just the fact that the statement itself is true. So it's basically like proving, something, but without having to say what that thing is.
Yeah, that's actually a really helpful way to think about it. And, the material we've been looking at had this really good analogy to help visualize it. Imagine you've got this super rare vintage stamp and it's locked away in a box. And you want to be able to assure someone that you actually have this specific stamp.
Okay.
So using a zero-knowledge proof, you could actually prove to them, like beyond a shadow of a doubt, that stamp is in the box, but you wouldn't have to open the box. They wouldn't see the stamp. They wouldn't know anything else about your collection. The box would stay sealed.
Exactly. And so when you start thinking about that idea and you apply it to like the insurance industry, that's when things start to get really interesting.
Right.
Because, I mean, insurance is all about exchanging information and verifying stuff, right?
Oh my gosh. The amount of data that we're talking about here is huge. Health records, financial histories, driving records, confidential business information. It's mind-blowing. And while sharing all that data is obviously super important for things like getting coverage, processing claims, or fighting fraud, it also creates these big challenges around privacy, compliance, and just maintaining customers' trust.
Absolutely. And this is, I think, where this whole idea of ZKPs could really change things. It's like a way to verify stuff without having to compromise everyone's privacy.
What? Verification without violation.
Exactly. And it sounds like London Insurance Week 2025 is going to be a major platform for showcasing this whole new way of thinking.
Yeah, and one thing that was super clear from the stuff we've been reading is that, ZKPs are not going to be just some side conversation at LIW 2025. This is like a turning point. This is where they go from being this kind of theoretical thing to a real practical tool that insurance companies can actually use. And it's not just about making things a bit more efficient here and there. It's about addressing these really fundamental business and ethical challenges that come with all this data.
Yeah. And what's really cool is that they're not weeding around. They're not just going to be sitting there talking about all the technical details.
Right.
At LIW 2025, it sounds like the focus is going to be on showing how ZKPs can actually solve real-world problems for insurers and the people they insure. Like, imagine being able to say to a customer, hey, we can check if you qualify for this insurance without even having to look at all your personal information. I mean, that's pretty huge. And LIW gives them this global stage to really show it off.
Right. And the material we've looked at actually gives us some really concrete examples of how ZKPs could be used in the insurance world. And
Right.
these are probably going to be some of the key demos that they do at LAW 2025.
Right.
So let's start with something like claims verification. How could ZKPs actually make that whole process smoother and more private?
Well, okay, so think about it. With claims, ZKPs could give the policyholder the power to prove that they met all the conditions of their policy. So, for example, they could verify their location at a specific time, that's relevant to what happened. They could use their phone data for that. Or they could, confirm a medical diagnosis that a doctor had given them, using a signed statement that's all like cryptographically secure. And they can do all that without having to share their whole location history or their entire medical record.
Right.
All the insurer gets is this mathematical proof that the criteria for the claim were met. It's a total game changer from how it works now, where you might have to give over, months of location data or a ton of medical information, a lot of which is totally irrelevant to the actual claim.
That's a massive improvement in terms of privacy, right? No more handing over your whole life story just to get your insurance claim processed. What about the underwriting process? When you're first applying for insurance, could ZKPs be helpful there too?
Oh, totally. So during underwriting, an applicant could use ZKPs to show that they meet certain risk criteria. Like they could prove that they're a non-smoker using verified health data, or they could show that they have a good driving record, using telematics data. But again, they wouldn't have to give the insurer all the nitty-gritty details from their health records or, a log of every single trip they've ever taken.
Okay, yeah. I can definitely see how that would be so much less intrusive and how it could really help build trust right from the start. The material also talked about something called fraud detection pools.
Right.
Which sounds fascinating. Can you explain how insurers could work together to identify potential fraud using ZKPs, but without, actually sharing sensitive customer information with each other?
Yeah, so this is really clever. The idea is that insurers could contribute, like encrypted signals or mathematical proofs about any kind of suspicious activity they see.
Okay.
And they put all that into a shared pool. And that way they could all work together to spot potential fraud without anyone having to actually reveal the specific customer or claim details that made them suspicious in the first place. It basically allows them to collaborate, but in a way that protects everyone's privacy much better.
So it's like they can see the warning signs of potential fraud, but they don't actually see the individual cases. Yeah. That could be really huge for the industry, right? Especially when it comes to working together in such a competitive environment. And it doesn't even stop with claims, underwriting, and fraud detection, does it? The material also mentions reinsurance and capital markets as potential areas where ZKPs could be used.
Oh, absolutely. So in those more complex financial transactions within the insurance world, ZKPs could allow cedents, those are the insurers transferring risk, to prove things about their overall portfolios or to show that certain triggers for losses have been met. And they could do that without having to give reinsurers or capital providers all the detailed information about individual policyholders, which could be really sensitive stuff. This could seriously streamline the whole verification and due diligence process for these huge financial deals.
Right. And even those fundamental processes, things like KYC and AML compliance, which are, obviously super important, but often involve sharing a lot of data, even those could be transformed by ZKPs, couldn't they?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So individuals or companies could use ZKPs to prove their identity or where their money comes from, to banks or insurers.
Yeah.
And they could do that without having to constantly broadcast all their personal details to tons of different companies.
Right.
It's about proving just the bare minimum to whoever needs to know, which makes everything safer and more private.
It sounds like there's going to be a lot of work to do at London Insurance Week 2025, just in terms of, educating people and explaining all this because, for a lot of people, and I'll admit I was one of them before we started looking into this whole idea of zero knowledge proofs still feels pretty abstract and technical.
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, making sure people actually understand this stuff is going to be crucial if they want people to actually start using it. It sounds like LIW 2025 is going to have all sorts of sessions, workshops, panels, really dedicated to making ZKPs easier to grasp And the focus is going to be less on all the complicated crypto stuff and more on, what's in it for businesses. How do you actually put this into practice?
Yeah.
And how do you navigate the challenges of adopting something like this in such a regulated industry?
Right. That makes sense. You've got to show people how it actually works in the real world, not just how cool the theory is. And it sounds like LIW 2025 is about more than just getting people up to speed, right? It's also about pushing for action, especially when it comes to collaboration and creating industry standards for ZKPs.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, getting everyone on the same page, the tech companies developing the solutions, the insurers, reinsurers, brokers, even the regulators who need to, understand and potentially oversee all this, getting them all talking to each other is absolutely essential if they want this to actually work. And it seems like LIW 2025 is going to be a major catalyst for all that. Figuring out how to make different systems work together, setting common rules, and getting pilot programs up and running to show that ZKPs can actually deliver on a large scale within the insurance world.
And of course, a big part of all this is getting the regulatory authorities comfortable with ZKPs and making sure they understand how they work. How do you think showcasing these technologies at an event like LIW 2025 can help with that?
Well, I think the key is showing them that ZKPs can actually boost both privacy and security at the same time, while still allowing for the necessary verification and compliance. It's a chance for the industry to really engage with the regulators who will be at LIW. Let them see how it works in practice, help them understand that DKPs are designed to protect privacy. All that can go a long way in building their confidence in this new approach.
So when it comes down to it, what would you say is the most important thing that ZKPs offer the insurance industry? What's the real reason everyone's so excited about them?
I think the bottom line is that ZKPs represent a real shift towards minimizing the amount of data we share. It's about moving to a future where the only information that gets shared is the absolute minimum needed for a specific transaction. ZKPs make what they call trustless interactions possible. And, it's important to understand what that means. Trustless doesn't mean you don't trust the other party, as a company.
Right.
It means that the trust in the verification process itself comes from mathematical guarantees built into the proof.
Oh.
You don't have to just take someone's word for it that the underlying data is accurate.
Right.
The ZKP proves it, and that proof is undeniable.
That's really powerful. But the material we've looked at also points out that, ZKPs do come with some challenges, right? It's not all smooth sailing.
Oh, yeah, for sure. There are some hurdles they're going to need to overcome. For example, generating and verifying these proofs can take a lot of computing power, especially when you're dealing with really complex statements or, mountains of data. And the technology itself is still relatively new in terms of widespread use. So it can be pretty tricky to implement it properly and securely. And like we were talking about before, they're still working on creating those industry-wide standards.
Right.
And that raises another big question, which is scalability. Can ZKPs really handle millions of everyday interactions in the insurance industry, or are they better suited for, just a small number of really big, important transactions?
So it's not exactly a simple plug-and-play solution right now.
Yeah.
But even with those challenges, the potential benefits seem pretty incredible.
They really do. Because if you can verify all this crucial information without actually having to access the underlying data, then that directly addresses all those growing concerns about data privacy and all the risks that come with, data breaches and things like that. In a world where this stuff is becoming more and more of a problem, ZKPs offer a way of doing business that's fundamentally more secure and respectful of everyone's privacy. And it really does look like London Insurance Week 2025 is going to be the moment when the insurance world takes a serious look at this unseen revolution, as they call it. I think we're going to see the power of being able to prove everything without revealing anything, and I think it's going to have a huge impact.
Proving everything while revealing nothing. That is such a powerful idea. So, to wrap up our deep dive today, the key takeaway for you listening is this. Zero-knowledge proofs are not just some obscure, computer science thing. This is a technology that has the potential to completely change the insurance industry, to create a whole new way of verifying information that protects everyone's privacy, and to reshape how everything works, from how people get insurance to how claims get processed, and a whole lot more.
And, what I think is really interesting to think about is how far this could go. This idea of proving everything while revealing nothing, that could apply to so many things. Think about your own work, how you interact online, how we all think about data and trust in this digital age. What if minimizing data became the standard everywhere? What kind of future could we create?
That is such a thought-provoking question to leave everyone with. Could
Mhm.
ZKPs go way beyond insurance? Could they actually revolutionize how we think about trust and data in all sorts of areas of our lives, in ways that completely change how we interact and do business in the digital world? It's something worth thinking about for sure.